I am sure that somebody left the gate open to the Cump Farm.
Oh, God, it feels like it today.
It was a shit drive home.
As soon as I left work for work this morning, I had a guy right up the back of me all the way. I thought, do you know what, you dickhead? I was late for work early.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of Skeptic Smash Talk. I'm your host Jason Jones, and joining me once again is my very special co-host and ever-suffering wife, Andi. Welcome back, Andi.
Hi there.
Okay, so whilst we're recording this and probably up all the way through until I finish editing and posting this episode online, the debate in Parliament on the second referendum is happening. And not that it can really have any influence, but if there's any excitement come out of this, I'll do an update show later in the week, maybe Thursday or Friday. I'll do another 10 or 12 minutes on that. But for this week, I'll add to the end of this episode the story that I did on the petition for this debate as a refresher. So if you haven't heard it, you'll probably want to do so just as a refresher, because there's some interesting background in how the petition came to be. So everything I say in the update will make a little bit more sense.
I best listen to that then.
Yes. Now, before I say fuck too much, let me remind you that this show does have an explicit material warning, so please be aware of that, and remember that sometimes headphones are a good thing, especially when there are little humans around, and this week in particular, because I will be talking about Mother Teresa, among other things. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, I released a short episode video late last week, and it was just a mess about as a trial for some future little projects I'm looking at doing. And depending on what happens, I'll be trying to produce some video content every week or so. And it's just a little bit for variation, but sometimes there's also topics that need some visualization. For example, I learnt a really cool math trick where you can square large numbers in your head, and I'd love to share that, but via audio, it's a bit of a rat salad. So where there's visual medium comes along, if I can use that to make things a little bit better, I'll do so. And as I said last week, you can get the full audio-only versions of the full podcast on YouTube. I've done that because for some people it's easier to listen to the shows from there, especially on older mobile devices, as you can turn down the video quality because there's no video there. You can turn that right down to 144p, and there's no effects on the audio quality at all. Therefore, it reduces any of your bandwidth problems. And as I've said in the past, if you have a particular podcatcher app that you prefer to use and this stream is not working there or not showing up, let me know and I can get that sorted out. You can also still listen directly to the show via the website. The latest 3 episodes will always be up there, and that's at skepticsmashtalk.com. So go to the front page and that's all there. And if you hit the blog link, you can find all the past shows in there also in the show notes. Occasionally there might be some sort of interesting blog post thrown in there for good measure, but not that often because I don't really get time to do that.
Sorry.
What was that?
I said do interesting.
Do interesting. Anyway, let's get on with the show. So that was a whole heap of me talking and not taking a breath. Andi, what have you been up to?
The usual. A lot of yoga. Mm-hmm. Been to yoga school. Learned something actually very interesting. We're doing about your senses and how that affects you as an individual, you know, right. Stripping down influences, so your sight, you know, your sounds, your sense of touch, etc. And we actually got around to talking about the usual, you know, how much Facebook, Twitter, the media influence you. I mean, they're like when adverts go on louder than the TV program to get your attention or stuff like that, you know, the little tricks they play, or when you go into a shop and they design the shops to kind of appeal to your senses.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. You said something about smells. Tell us about that.
As an example, shops, they have aromatherapy that pelt out into the streets. Like your coffee shops will actually have an aromatherapy pelting out, smelling of coffee.
Yeah, so when you're saying aromatherapy, we're not talking about lavender and...
No, we're talking about coffee smells or pastry smells, so that when you go in past, you're thinking, oh my God, that smells gorgeous.
Yeah.
I must have. And it appeals to your senses, so then you act on them senses, and they're like kind of drawing you in and suckering you in with that. So I was like really angry thinking about this.
See, in the olden days... I'm giving away some old secrets now. What we used to do, so in the pizza shop, was as soon as you walk in, you turn the grill plate on, and straight away you'd put some chopped up onions and peppers and stuff like that to get those smells around the area. So you're saying now they've got an artificial sort of way of doing that.
Yeah, basically, and it covers everything. I mean, they actually, even for like the likes of yoga studios, they'll like pump out the smell of like the incense oils rather than actually burning them. But to be honest, I don't like coffee shops, and I tell you that because I don't like coffee. The smell of coffee actually really makes me feel nauseous, so it has the opposite effect on me. Now, if they did burning pastries, that would be different. I'd be in there like a shop probably.
Yeah. Now, so you're telling me you're actually going to hippie school and learning to be a skeptic?
Yeah, but we are. It's not drink the Kool-Aid and necessarily believe in all the crystal healing and stuff. Do you know? It's open to discussion. You know, you don't, just because you're on the course doesn't mean you have to believe absolutely everything that's given to you in a yoga book or a magazine.
That's a big misconception, Stan. I think we've talked about this before, haven't we? That yoga's all about the being the dirty, smelly hippie with the dreadlocks and all that sort of stuff. It's gone past that. Now that's still there, and it even goes worse. There was that guy who did the who invented the hot yoga, and he tried to patent certain yoga.
Bikram
That's
yoga.
him.
He did.
And
You had to, in order to call it a Bikram yoga, you had to sign up to his ways and his methods and pay him a lot of money. Yeah. And he ended up being done for, was it not sexual assault?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Several cases of sexual assault, actually. Yeah. Anyway. So the weekend papers were full of stories on the canonization of Mother Teresa this weekend, as would be expected. Also as expected, many mentioned the 2 so-called miracles that she had to have performed to allow this to happen. And very few questioned the miracles altogether. But apart from digging up some old Hitchens essays, none of the mainstream media talked about how disgustingly evil this woman was. So, I'll do that for you. Well, I guess as the most orthodox of the orthodox Christians, Teresa was very anti-abortion and contraception. We can come to expect that. But this is the person living in the slums of Calcutta where HIV, AIDS and other STDs are rife, not to mention teenage pregnancies, many as a result of rape. But to Teresa, this was all a part of God's plan. It was God's plan for fathers to rape daughters and throw them out on the streets when they got pregnant to the father. And I promise I'll stick to the one topic for the most part today, but I wonder how much damage has been done by missionaries like Teresa going around the planet vomiting out the sins of birth control and safe sex and the simple necessities of sexual education. But for now, to Teresa. Let's just have a look at some of her better-known controversies, starting with the withdrawal of the civil liberties in India by Indira Gandhi, and that was in 1975. Mother Teresa said of this, people are happier, there are more jobs, and there are no more strikes. Well, there's no strikes because all the strikers were in confinement. Good job there, Teresa. What a saint you are. Anyway, this is a rare case where the Vatican actually distanced itself from those comments. A rare case. Teresa encouraged members of her order to secretly baptise dying patients, irrelevant to the regards of the individual's religion. A former member of the Missionaries of Charity wrote that the sisters were to ask each person in danger of death if he or she wanted a ticket to heaven. If they said yes, the sisters took this to mean consent to baptism. The sister would then pretend that she was just cooling the patient's head with a wet cloth, when in fact she was baptizing him, saying quietly the necessary words. Secrecy was important so that it would not come known that Mother Teresa's sisters were baptizing Hindus and Muslims. Very good job, Teresa. What a saint you are. In 1981, Teresa flew to Haiti to accept the Legion of Honor from the right-wing dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier, who, as you may remember, was found to have stolen millions of dollars from the impoverished country of Haiti. Okay, so there's nothing that suggests that Teresa directly benefited from this, but there's speculation. But there's suggestion also that the honour, and maybe more, was used to keep Duvalier in Teresa's good graces. Again, what a great job, Teresa. What a saint you are. In his book, The Missionary Position, Christopher Hitchens criticised her for what was perceived to be Mother Teresa's endorsement of the regime of Enver Hoxha, the socialist Albanian. Hoxha, if you remember, held power in Albania for 40 or so years by literally eliminating his opponents. There's unsubstantiated stories of individuals taking revenge on other families or individuals that had wronged them by starting up rumours that the head of the family was going to run for office or start a new political movement to oppose Hoxha, and quite quickly this person would disappear. Some suggest Hoxha makes Kim Jong-un and his anti-aircraft missile firing squad look like a pussy. Anyway, even though Hoxha destroyed the church and all religion in Albania and actually made Albania an atheist country, he tortured and he murdered its religious leaders all along the way. Teresa visited Albania and supported him. When she visited in 1989, she was received by Hoxha's widow and many other controversial state and party officials. She even laid a bouquet of flowers on Hoxha's grave. Good job, Teresa. What a fucking saint you are. The public image of Mother Teresa as a helper of the poor is very misleading, and only a few hundred people are served by the largest of her homes. Among the 200 charitable assistance organisations reported to operate in Calcutta, Missionaries of Charity is not ranked amongst any of the largest charity organisations, with the Assembly of God, the charity notable for serving the greatest of number of meals to the poor. They serve at least 18,000 meals per day to the poor. And as a side note, the Assembly of God feed the homeless, irrelevant of their religion. Anyway, it's alleged that many operations of the order engage in no charitable activity at all, but instead they use their funds for missionary work. For example, none of the 8 facilities that the Missionary of Charity run in Papua New Guinea have any residents in them at all, being purely there for the purpose of converting local people to Catholicism. She was even accused by Hindus in India of trying to convert the poor by stealth. Christopher Hitchens described Mother Teresa's organisation as a cult that promoted suffering and did not help those in need. He said that Mother Teresa's own words on poverty proved her intention was not to help people. Quoting her own words at a 1981 press conference in which she was asked, "Do you teach the poor to endure their lot?" she replied, "I think it is very beautiful for the poor to accept their lot, to share it with the passion of Christ. I think the world is being much helped by the suffering of the poor people." Again, good job, Teresa. What a saint you are. I'm not too sure if this is the worst of it or not, but as far as medical care is concerned, well, essentially you have more chance of survival running naked in no man's land during the Battle of the Somme with a bright orange target on your ass, because the terminally sick and the infectious were housed with the mostly relatively healthy, so cross-contamination was rife. They would rinse syringes in warm water and reuse them. Painkillers were never used. In 1991, Robert Fox, the editor of The Lancet, visited the Home for the Dying in Calcutta and described the medical care the patients received as haphazard. He observed that sisters and volunteers, some of whom had no medical knowledge or training at all, had to make decisions about patient care because there were no doctors in the hospice. Good job, Teresa. What a saint you are. In 2013, a comprehensive review covering 96% of the literature on Mother Teresa, a group from the University of Montreal academics reinforced the foregone criticism, detailing, among other issues, the missionaries' practice of caring for the sick by glorifying their suffering instead of relieving it. They also reinforced her questionable political contacts and her suspicious management of the enormous sums of money that she'd received, and her overly dogmatic views on women's sexual health and divorce. When they questioned the Vatican's motivations for ignoring the mass criticism, the study concluded that Mother Teresa's hallowed image, which does not stand up to analysis of the facts, was constructed, and that her beatification was orchestrated by an effective media relations campaign engineered by the anti-abortion BBC journalist Malcolm Muggeridge. Good job, Teresa. What a saint you are. To finish this part off, I want to turn back to Hitchens. He was the only witness called by the Vatican to give evidence against Teresa's beatification and canonization process, because the Vatican had abolished the traditional devil's advocate role. This was done by Pope Paul Part II. As a result, he was able to canonize or beatify over 18,000 people. In comparison, prior to John Paul II, only 98 saints were canonized prior to him in the 20th century alone by any other pope. In fact, Pope John Paul Part II canonated and beatified more people than all the popes before him for about 400 years. And Andy says that I'm obsessive. Hitchens said her intentions were not to help people and that she lied to donors about the use of their contributions. He said it was by talking to her that I discovered, and she assured me that she wasn't working to alleviate poverty, he said. She was working to expand the number of Catholics. She said, I'm not a social worker. I don't do it for this reason. I do it for Christ. I do it for the church. Good fucking job, Mother Teresa. What a brilliant fucking saint you are. Right, so why is the church doing this? Why is the Pope travelling around like a rock star and not hiding in shame? It's to keep the media talking about the church's saints and not the internal sinners or the ones that we know about. As the Montreal study concluded, this is all just an orchestrated and effective media relations campaign. Your voice, I must say, is sounding awesome. How are you liking the new microphone?
Are you wanting me to mention the new microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks no different to the last one, if I'm honest.
No, but any of our musician friends will be very impressed when I say that we've got Andrew. It's a Shure SM58, which is the microphone of Roxy. Your eyes are rolling in your head. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
It's a microphone.
No, this particular microphone has been around. This model has been around for literally donkey's years. About 30 or 40 years, Shure have been making this microphone, and they're not very expensive, but it's the go-to microphone for rock stars. It's like the Les Paul guitar.
Right.
Now that guitar you see all rock stars have?
Yeah.
That's the microphone of them.
Right, okay.
Very impressive. But I tell you what, it took a fuckload of effort to get here. Fucking Amazon.
Amazon Gate.
Oh my God. Now, this all happened before Thursday, but I was at the Skeptics in the Pub meeting on Thursday in Liverpool, and just as we're sitting there waiting for everything to sort of occur, the news comes on, and what, unfortunately, I'm kind of half laughing. Nobody was hurt, so I can laugh about it, but one of SpaceX's rockets blew up. Now, SpaceX obviously is owned by Jeff Bezos, who also owns Amazon. And by the way, I'm going to put this out there. If you ever have a problem with Amazon, Jeff Bezos' email is jeff@amazon.com, and I doubt that he actually looks at it, but people are looking at that email. And the only way I actually got a response to my problems, which we'll probably
it's
get
so
into.
hard to get into contact with them.
It's fucking annoying.
I actually Googled at one stage, how do I contact Amazon by phone? Because I was desperate, and it came up with Amazon link to how to buy where to buy phones, and I was just like, oh.
Anyway, so on Thursday, one of SpaceX's rockets actually exploded on the launch pad.
That's where all his money's going.
Yeah, but it had one of Facebook's internet satellites on there. So Zuckerberg's put a lot of money into that, and it's now up in smoke. But I blame the Pope for that, because last week, as Zuckerberg's probably $1 million worth of satellite, if not, would be tens of millions for those things. The rockets are in the tens of millions as well. Literally gone up in smoke. Zuckerberg's off meeting the Pope, so that answers that question. Does the Pope and does God like space exploration? I don't think he does, because he blowed it up.
He blowed it up.
He explodinated it. Hardly a coincidence. I'm calling
divine
conspiracy.
Intervention.
Yeah. But then, so Amazon, fuck me. I don't know what's happened there, but so I ordered your microphone and the holder for that and the microphone arm. Now, I could pay and join Amazon Prime, and I think it's £7 or something extra. No, it's more than that. It's £70 pound for the month, isn't it? For the year,
isn't it? Yeah.
But so I refused to. I'm not paying extra money to be treated like a customer. That's bullshit. But what had happened was the one part of the order, there was 3 parts in the order, one item, as much as it was showing as available, wasn't available. So the order was delayed. So I made the order. This is going back a couple of weeks now. I won't go into all the details, but a couple of weeks back, on the Saturday, I ordered 3 items. Now, obviously, it's Saturday, and I figured, well, maybe that will arrive. But if I do fast delivery, that will arrive by Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. Sunday morning, no, it would have been Monday morning, you get the thing coming up saying that your order's going to be delivered tomorrow. And I think that's fine. Have a look. So on the Tuesday, I have a look, and then they say the order's going to be delivered the following Tuesday. So that gives me 10 days from the day that I ordered it. So, as you can imagine, that pissed me off just a little bit. So,
as it said, it was dispatched.
Yeah.
So it was dispatched.
Yeah. So I get on the phone to them, and
oh, by the way, I'm still waiting for a mouse map from 3 months ago.
Yeah, you've never got your money back for that, have you? And it's never been delivered. Jesus, I know that's only £1, but I reckon send Jeff Bezos Jeff at Amazon.com. Everybody. Ever you have a problem, email him.
I've given up with Amazon now.
I know. I'm pretty much done with them. But I rung the thing is, I rang up, spoke to somebody, and you know what I can be like on the phone. It takes about 3 minutes, and now I start getting really pissed off.
3?
Okay, 3 seconds. But no, I'm getting better at it. I have my tablets, so I'm talking to this guy, and I think they must have a call center now in Jamaica. I know they're offshore, but
they are. And I mean, the last time I spoke to them, they were in. It sounded like it was an Indian accent. It did sound more Indian. And,
yeah, to me it sounded Jamaican. And then the first girl I spoke to, they want to do that chit chat. So she starts talking to me, and she says, "Oh, I've got a Jason Jones. I've got a cousin called Jason Jones in," and this is why I thought it was in Jamaica, because she says in Kingston Town, and she said in Kingston Town. I thought, Jamaica, that's different. And I just said, look, with all due respect, I do not care about your family and where they live. I'm pissed off. You're not getting paid enough to listen to me get pissed off even more. Why don't you just get me one of your supervisors?
They don't like pass you on to a supervisor, though, do they?
No. And I think it's in their KPIs. They have to close so many calls and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, so somebody gets on the phone, and I said to the guy, is this being recorded? And he said, oh, yeah, why? And I said, I just want to know that this is being recorded. And everybody I spoke to from then on, I just asked them that question. Anyway, so this guy couldn't be nicer. Could not have been nicer. He was apologetic, very sorry, Mr. Jones, blah, blah, blah. We need to get this sorted out. And he said, look, I don't know why it's done that, but and I said to him, the thing is, I said, because I tried it. I said, if I joined Amazon Prime and ordered these items, you would actually have them delivered to me today. Not 10 days from now, today, because where I work is in this same day area.
They've moved all their resources to Amazon Prime, I think.
Yeah, so if you don't pay the 79 fucking quid per year, you get treated like...
I had an issue with Amazon. I ordered some stuff. They were coming to the premises. It's a business premises, been there 20 years, right? They've been coming quite happily for ages. All of a sudden, I was getting notifications saying your business doesn't exist there or no longer there or whatever.
Yeah.
And I ended up you gave me a contact number in the end, and I ended up ringing. And
that's right,
they actually asked me to go on Google Earth, and tell me what I'm looking at, so I could explain to him whether it was the same.
They were using the Royal Mail system instead of a basic sat-nav.
It wasn't the Royal Mail system. It was the local Wigan depot. And apparently they were getting sent out to a field because their coordinates were taking them out to a field. I'm thinking, you were here this morning delivering a different package for somebody else at the very same address.
Yeah.
And I was just so frustrated. And he goes, I'm going to cancel it and reorder it for you. I'm like, well, how's that going to find it here?
Well, that's what this guy said to me. He was being real nice. I know because I spoke to that guy at the depot as well. And I'm pissed off that I didn't keep his number. I thought, no, I'm never going to need this again. But so this guy says to me, what you should do is just cancel the order and then reorder the items. He said, while you're doing that, it will pop up on my screen and I'll expedite the order and we will get it to you tomorrow. I thought, well, that's okay. I said, are you sure tomorrow? Because I work in different locations and I don't want to be messing people around. And if it's going to go to a certain place on a certain date, I just need to know and we can change the delivery. Yeah. Definitely tomorrow, Jason. Definitely tomorrow. What address do you want it sent to? So I work from home on the Wednesday. So get it sent home. No problemo at all. And he promised me with his hand on his heart, he said there is going to be a problem with the boom stand. That's going to be, that won't come till Friday. I said, right, well, that Friday, I'm in the Warrington office, so you need to send it to them. No problems, Jason. Everything's sorted out. Wednesday morning, sitting there doing some work, phone beeps, message comes up, parcel's been delivered.
To work.
I thought, you got to be fucking kidding me. And that's when believe it or not, I didn't get pissed off until that stage. Then I got pissed off. Got onto another person, same story. Don't want to upset you. Can't, and I'm everything I'm doing now is emailing and CCing Jeff Bezos. And that's jeff@amazon.com, just in case I've not mentioned that. So I'm emailing, trying to get everything sorted out. And I get another person on the phone, terribly sorry, we have to make this right, blah, blah, blah. And he says to me, what I'm going to do, and this is mid-afternoon now, and he said, what I'm going to do is get onto the depot, get the driver to turn around, pick up the items, and drop it back to you, drop it to your home. I thought, well, that's lovely. He said, but you need to make sure that somebody's there. I said, well, somebody's there until 6 o'clock. I said, it's got to be before 6 o'clock. Rang up the office. They'd already picked it up. Somebody from the office had picked it up from the reception. Ring them back. Please take it down to reception. Somebody's going to pick it up. Nothing. No. Absolutely fucking nothing. And then, well, eventually, obviously you're talking and sounding great on the Shure SM58 Rockstar microphone. Nothing came until the Friday.
And didn't it come really late Friday as well?
Yeah. Like, later. Well, yeah, very late. I thought, fucking last delivery. Sat around waiting and waiting and waiting. Come to the last. In the meantime, I get a phone. Well, in between all the phone calls, I said to him, right, so the part that's still coming on Friday, which all the other parts were going to come with now, what address have you got for that? That was supposed to be sent to my work address. They had it down for my home address. Luckily, it didn't come. I think it was 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night or something like that. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. So that's it for Amazon. There's more to the story than that. We've been harping on for about 10, 15 minutes on it, but that is the last time I ever buy anything off them.
No, I'm at that stage now.
They charged me £17.50 for the delivery as well.
No.
Fucking unbelievable. Okay, so it's been nearly 100 years, but geologists have put their good minds to work on something other than smashing up rocks for long enough to all agree that we are now living in a newly defined epoch dubbed the Anthropocene epoch. Okay, so it wasn't every rock smasher. It was an international working group that voted on this, and it was a vote of 34-0 with one abstention. And for the life of me, I still can't understand why the one abstained. But I reckon he could be one of those blokes that's always voting no as he feels that somebody has to. Or being that it had taken the geologist so long to actually decide on something, he probably went out for a shit and missed the vote. Anyway, the changing climate, rising sea levels, layers of pollution and plastics and the spread of species and disease, not to mention the radioactive particles left after the bomb test and the use twice thereof after, have contributed to permanent changes in Earth's rocks. Now, this was agreed at the 35th International Geological Congress, but it, at the moment, is just a recommendation and needs to be agreed by the International Union of Geological Sciences before it can be formally accepted and textbooks changed. Because if there's a single group of people that love formality and red tape, it's those rock smashers. But this, however, is not a new discovery. Anthropocene was popularized in the year 2000 by Paul Crutzen, a Nobel-winning chemist, and Eugene Stromer, a biologist who specialized in algae. And Stromer was doing this in the early 1980s. And I only mention their fields of research because neither gentleman are or were geologists, and the media are just calling them scientists. Stromer originally coined and used the term in the early 1980s to refer to the impact and evidence of the impact of human activities on the planet. And so that's where we get the name Anthropocene. It's a combination of its Greek roots, anthropo, meaning human, and scene, meaning new. But that's not what's important about this story. What is, though, is that this new epoch is completely driven by humans. We have done this, and as much as knuckle-brained morons like Malcolm Roberts will continue to insist that the evidence of change to the environment are a massive governmental conspiracy led by NASA, the proof is there, and it has been there for such a long time. In the 1970s, before Eugene Stromer was using the term Anthropocene, insurance companies were factoring in climate change and damage to the environment into their policies, and the world's military leaders were factoring in this also. And I'll come back to those later on. But for now, the scientists still need to agree on the start date for the new epoch because, like I said, they need to ensure that as much biodegradable red tape is used as possible. And as such, they are now deciding where the symbolic line should be to mark the beginning of the epoch. It's been suggested that they'll look for a particular data line or a data point in tree rings or coral reefs, or some sediment that will eventually become stratum. The latter being my preferred option, as if we keep going the way that we're going, there won't be any trees or coral left to study when Greg the alien finally arrives, long after we have destroyed the only home we have ever had. Now, before I move on too far, the ethicist Professor Clive Hamilton from Charles Sturt Uni wrote in Nature a caution to anyone saying, "Welcome to the Anthropocene," as we should be quite concerned about it, and a welcoming place the Anthropocene probably will not be. He said the Anthropocene should frighten us and we should present it as such. So, one thing the boffins will argue vehemently about for some time, apart from where the symbolic line should be, is what it should be. And pretty much everyone that matters at the moment is suggesting that the point should be about the mid-20th century, which, of course, lends itself to August 1945, marking the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And being that the Anthropocene is all about human destruction, it's quite fitting, but I wonder if it's fitting enough, as we have had one single human animal that has caused more devastation and death and misery than any other person on the planet. He's also left a chemical signature in a way that will last on the surface of the Earth until the day the surface is swallowed up by geological subduction. I am, of course, talking about Thomas Midgley Jr. and his addition of the toxic metal lead into petrol. Now, every historian will tell you that the reason this was done was to reduce the knocking in a petrol engine and to increase performance. Well, that's a little bit true, but not quite true. The reason that lead, or to be specific, tetraethyl lead, was added is that it was extremely profitable to do so. The same result could have been achieved and is now being achieved by adding harmless ethanol to petrol. But being that you couldn't patent alcohol and every high school student knows how to make it, there's no profit in it. Ergo, let's create and patent tetraethyl lead, which for the rest of this episode, if you don't mind, we'll just call TEL. And you can't tell the story of Thomas Midgley Jr. without talking about his other two most deadly inventions. And although he had over 100 patents to his name, none were more deadly than TEL and chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, which we'll get to, but his final invention also that resulted in the death of every single person that used it. Well, actually, it only killed one person, and that was Midgley himself, and that was because he was the only person to ever use it. And this part is normally told at the end of the story on Midgley, but I'm going to put it early, predominantly for anybody that doesn't know the story, may get upset in thinking that after the story I'm about to tell, that Midgley passed away in his sleep at a ripe old age after a long life. No. At the age of 51, Midgley contracted polio, which basically crippled him. To help get himself in and out of bed, Midgley devised systems of ropes and pulleys that seemed to work really quite well until when in 1944 he was caught up in the mechanism and he was strangled and suffocated to death. And if you think I'm a monster for taking joy in his death, wait until the end of this story and you'll know all about the death and destruction that Midgley had caused to the entire planet and its inhabitants, all for nothing but money and profit. And it's as close to a miracle that you can get that the damage was discovered before it was too late to do anything about it by a very tenacious scientist named Claire Patterson, who, as a result, was persecuted by the profiteers, again to the degradation of the planet. Because of his passion for his research and his passion to expose the damage that TEL was doing, Patterson had grants and funding for his research cut and his employment opportunities restricted, all at the hands of the one percenters who thought, and still do think, that profit at the cost of a dying planet is all okay. Just imagine what a brilliant and tenacious brain like Claire Patterson's can discover if it's unimpeded by the corporate pigs. I'm risking going off on yet another tangent now, but how many times have we seen this in history? We think of Galileo or Francis Bacon, or even the self-imposed silence of Darwin. Imagine what else Hooke and Newton could have achieved if they had buried their hatchets, or for that matter, the millions of schoolchildren that will come home today after being convinced that the father of a Palestinian Jewish carpenter created the planet and all and more that we can survey in just 6 days. And don't be fooled into thinking that the church is not doing this for money. The Pope sits on top of a golden throne while billions of his followers starve. But we're not having tangents today. Let's talk about the addition of lead into petrol. Like I said, this was done to reduce or alleviate knocking and to enhance the power output of petrol engines. The problem is, even in the 1920s, the toxic nature of lead was well and truly acknowledged. Moreover, it wasn't a recent discovery. The Romans knew all about this, and for the same reason as Midgley, they also didn't care. For them, it was most dangerous to the miners and the smelters. They could see the short-term effects, but I guess they never noticed the long-term effects of lead poisoning, as they used it in their aqueducts and baths, and even as a food additive or a wine additive as a sweetener. Scholars are still arguing whether or not this poisoning of the population of Rome led to the fall of Rome. I'm a little on the fence still, but when you consider the direct and unequivocal link with the removal of lead from petrol, with the drop of violent crime rates, it kind of speaks for itself. And this has been argued for and against for quite some time, mostly by the TEL industry. But in a paper titled The Environmental Policy as Social Policy, The Impact of Childhood Lead Exposure on Crime, Jessica Walpole-Reyes says the following: childhood lead exposure can lead to psychological deficits that are strongly associated with aggressive and criminal behaviour. In the late 1970s in the United States, lead was removed from gasoline under the Clean Air Act using the sharp state-specific restrictions in lead exposure resulting from this removal. This article finds that the reduction in childhood lead exposure in the late 1970s and early 1980s is responsible for significant declines in violent crime in the 1980s. Now, this was published in 2007, and for whatever reason, some people are still trying to argue the results, but it's not just within the USA. We see this time gap of 22 years all around the world, and I guess it's fair to argue that you cannot link TEL or environmental lead to the increase in violent crime, but you sure as shit can't argue the dramatic decrease in violent crimes 20 or 22 years after the TEL was banned from use. What no one can or would ever want to do is put the human cost to this. And yes, the boffins will calculate that a percentage of violent crimes were or may have been a result of TEL, but what about the subsequent crimes? This, again, is, I'm at risk of a tangent, but the crimes that are committed as a result of somebody being a part of the criminal justice system are generally never regarded. For example, and forgive me, I don't have all the references here, but I remember this example when I was doing some criminology papers many, many years ago now. Essentially, the story goes along the lines of a young man gets arrested on suspicion and is held in custody and can't make bail. Now, my memory tells me he was held at Rikers in New York City, but I'm not 100% sure my memory can be trusted on this one. But even so, if it wasn't Rikers, it was somewhere just as rough. Anyway, while waiting for his trial, something happened and this guy ended up killing another prisoner. He claimed self-defense but lost at trial and was given a sentence for murder. It wasn't until several years later that a witness came forward to exonerate him for the murder. And I forgot the key point to all this story was the original charge that he was being held for, he was completely innocent of. And this has nothing to do with TEL, but it's an example of how statistics are not measured correctly, in my opinion. We talk about the rise and fall of crime rates, but never think about the associated crimes. In this scenario, we have a guy charged with murder because he was put into a situation that he never should have been in the first place. But let's take a hypothetical scenario linked with TEL. We know there were many workers in the TEL production sites that literally went insane. Several jumped off the roofs of buildings to their death, probably thinking that they were going to have a quick flight around the building. I'm not making light of this. Lead itself is a neurotoxin, and with TEL being fat-soluble, exposure just on the skin meant direct contact could cause poisoning, even death. Anyway, so let's imagine one of those poor workers dies as a result of working at the TEL plant. He has a wife and family that, being that this is in the 1920s or 30, they now need to fend for themselves. The Great Depression has just begun, so what work that is available is prioritised for men. So the widow turns to crime to support her family. The 21st Amendment still hasn't been ratified yet, so prohibition on alcohol is still making money for the underbelly. Maybe she turns to rum running or something like that, or she sets up her own still, or maybe something worse, but we're just imagining. So let's just say she's pretty handy behind the wheel of a Tin Lizzie and gets caught running rum from Canada. She goes to prison. And her kids are made wards of the state until they get the boot at about 16 years old, and they go to live on the streets. And that story then goes on to write itself, because we know that socioeconomics has a massive effect on propensity for crime, as well as substance abuse and related crimes, as well as things like suicide and teenage pregnancy. It's all links in. And the laws then, and now for that matter, are even worse, because they create the social underclass that becomes a generational problem. And I know many get out of the loop, but statistically, the children of offenders are more likely to offend, as is with the case of children of drug users. They have a statistically significantly higher rate of use themselves. And I know I'm painting a really bleak picture here, but it's just an example of how an honest, hard-working class working fathers exposure to TEL can lead to several generations of his descendants being caught up in the criminal justice system. But the statistics will only ever show them in the drugs column or the property crime or the bootlegging column. Anyway, like I said, in the 1920s, as with the days of the Roman Empire, lead poisoning from the mining and manufacturing process was well and truly known. But to play the devil's advocate for some time anyway, the environmental damage may not have been fully understood. But shamefully, when it was, the capitalists acted as they only know how. They did whatever they needed to do to protect their profits. But back to the 1920s and see what we knew back then and how seriously Midgley and his employees were taking this problem. And we can start essentially right at the point when manufacturing began. Nearly immediately, production workers were showing signs of lead poisoning. Conditions like blindness and severe insomnia, kidney failure or hearing loss, cancers, hallucinations and death. And as quickly as the symptoms were beginning to show, the company, which was a collaboration of General Motors and DuPont and Standard Oil, named pleasingly the Ethyl Corporation, which is a side note, is still in operation today. Anyway, as I was saying, as soon as the symptoms started to show in its workers, the company did all that it could to hide the fact, to the extent that nobody really knows the exact numbers of poisoning or fatalities. The company even went as far as suggesting that at one particular plant where workers developed irreversible delusions, that this was a result of them working too hard. But they couldn't always hush it up. In 1924, at the Bayway refinery in New Jersey, 5 men died and 34 men essentially lost their mind and were all diagnosed insane, all just within a few days of each other, all due to poor ventilation. But to try and satisfy the naysayers, Thomas Midgley himself held a demonstration for reporters to show them how safe TEL was by pouring the TEL all over his hands, and then he inhaled the vapours from a bottle for 60 seconds, declaring that he could do this every day without having any problems. But a few days after this, the state of New Jersey shut down the plant. Furthermore, Midgley would have to take a prolonged absence for the second time from work to recover from lead poisoning. After this, he avoided all contact with TEL as much as he possibly could. Now, I'll continue this story next week and we'll introduce from stage left the geochemist and the walking, talking definition of tenacity, Dr. Claire Cameron Patterson, and we'll discuss the damages to the planet that TL had caused and how Patterson had discovered this and how the capitalists tried to shut him up. But to finish off this story for today, I need to talk about chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, and the destruction that it has caused. So, not content with the spreading of a layer of death and destruction of lead on the Earth's surface and atmosphere, Midgley decided to send some poison spacewards. So it's probably not fair. I'm sure Midgley knew the dangers of TEL to humans. He proved that on himself. But there's nothing concrete to suggest that he understood the very long-term effects of lead on the surface and in the atmosphere. But I'm probably being a little generous, as he was no slouch in the intelligence arena. Remember, he had over 100 patents. But to the CFCs, before Midgley, refrigerants were dangerous things. One leak in a hospital refrigerator in 1929 killed more than 100 people. Refrigerants were known to cause explosions and in some cases corrode whatever they'd come in contact to. So when Midgley created a refrigerant gas that was not flammable and not corrosive and actually quite safe to breathe, starting production in the 1930s, consumers could not consume enough of his CFC gases. And these were used in everything from fridges to car air conditioning systems to pressurized food and beauty products. But it took 50 years before it was discovered the damages that CFCs were doing to the atmosphere, in particular to the ozone layer. Now, ozone is one of those phenomenally strange chemicals that at ground level is a pollutant, but up in the atmosphere is life-saving. In fact, it's needed to block out UV radiation, and it's best at blocking out big chunks of UVB. UVB, that's the radiation that causes some cancers. So when it was discovered that there was a substantial size hole in the ozone layer over the Antarctic, the scientific world took note. You see, the problem is not just that this extra UVB radiation is going to severely increase cancer rates and death in the southern hemisphere, which is pretty shitty if you live down that way, but being that the increased radiation from the sun is hitting and melting the ice from the Antarctic, global ocean and sea levels were going to rise. And this is just another example of how delicate nature is. If the hole had appeared in the northern hemisphere, there may have been more problems with skin cancers, but because of population sizes. But being that in the northern hemisphere, in summer, the Earth is further away from the sun than during the southern hemisphere summer, it may, in a strange way, have balanced out. But being that the Arctic ice sheets are on water, if they're to melt, they'll have no influence on sea levels. It's only when ice melts on land does it cause a problem. Anyway, unlike lead, CFCs will disappear, and in about another 100 years or so, the ozone layer would have fully repaired itself. But lead is forever, and there will be a better explanation on that next week. But in the ground, buried away for 4.5 billion years, lead was doing no harm. But as soon as we lifted it up and industrialized and consumed it, we now have a uniform layer that covers the globe. And that layer, as I said in the beginning, will remain on the surface of the planet until the surface is swallowed up and renewed in 1 billion or so years from now. So my dear geologists, if you're looking for something to mark the Anthropocene's beginning, I give you the third decade of the 20th century. For everyone else thinking whether or not there's a global conspiracy managed by 97% of all scientists and orchestrated by NASA to trick the population into believing that you humans have caused the very nearly irreversible destruction of the third rock from the sun, remember Thomas Midgley and his corporate and capitalist backers. Now, don't forget to join me next week when we meet the hero of the planet, Claire Patterson. So, Donald Trump, now he went to Mexico and pretty much, so we all know that he's been banging on about building his Mexican wall. So he goes over the border to Mexico. Guess what he doesn't talk about?
Building a wall?
Exactly. Said absolutely nothing about it.
It's quite obvious now. He basically chooses what he speaks about depending on who he's speaking to.
Exactly.
There's absolutely no consistency with that man at all, apart from him being a consistent twat.
Yeah. I can't remember who said it now. Somebody said last week that Donald Trump's opinion depends on the last person that he spoke to. So whoever he spoke to yesterday, that's his policy today.
Yeah.
What a fucking moron. Now, we watched his immigration speech. It was like watching the Nuremberg rally.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. And he keeps saying, so he's going on about them and we're going to do this to them and they're going to build the wall and we're going to get rid of those he seems to think that he's going to get 2 million people rounded up on his first day in office.
Now, that sounds quite frightening, really, doesn't it?
We've seen that before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
About 75 years ago. Absolutely. And they're the people, apparently, in the land of the free. What the land of the free are going to do, the new president of the land of the free is going to round up these 2 million to start with, illegal immigrants, and they're going to be the labour for the wall.
This man is just not intelligent at all. Why would you want anybody with sub-intelligence to run office?
I think part of the problem is, now just remember, we voted, a little bit more than 50% of this country voted for Brexit. So we're not on top of the chain of IQ countries.
But we didn't take an individual and vote him based on his rantings and discriminatory ways and racism. And I mean, well, the whole Brexit argument, that was just, both sides were filled with absolutely nothing tangible.
Exactly. So, and fear. They used fear.
And they did. They used fear. But there was, I mean, that's why it was 50-50. But to take one individual who has actually proven himself he's contradicted himself on so many levels, and it's been shown to everybody in the world, yet he still gets these people to vote for him. Is he that good of a speaker?
He knows about 5 words. He repeats himself. A part of the problem is his opposition is the most hated politician in American history.
This is the thing, though. People are voting against who they don't want, as opposed to who they do want.
That's part of what we do.
And I kind of
tried to send a message.
That.
Yeah, but and half of me thinks that okay, so let him do it and see what happens. But I think I've said this before on the podcast, but Jerry Springer said that you're not just voting for 4 years of Trump. You can vote him in, he can fuck everything up good and proper, and then somebody else will come along and fix it up. But it's the damage that man can do in 4 years. Now he's talking all the trade agreements he's going to rip up. The Paris Climate Agreement he's going to rip up.
Oh, it's frightening. Yeah. It's absolutely frightening how we can have a goon get so close.
Yeah, he said that, and he's talking about Japan when he says this, but he says that their allies aren't paying their way. So if they don't pay, he's going to pull out pull the defence out of their countries and support them. So he's going to leave Japan open for South Korea to come over and
Dear God.
It's like protection money.
It is frightening, isn't it?
Do you think he's trying to lose? Or do you think he actually wants to win
do you know, I actually think he's actually a little bit crazy. Yeah. I think he's a little bit... He's obviously a misogynist, and he's obviously got his own high opinion of himself, but I actually think he's a little bit mad.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. But again, the opposition is so Bill Clinton is... I didn't realise this. I thought he wasn't very highly regarded, but I'm reliably told that Bill Clinton, if it was legally possible, and there may still be a way that he can be president again, but Bill Clinton was one of the most admired presidents of very recent times.
You normally find, though, it's once a president's been and gone, and be slagged him off and said how crap he was at his job, that you realise actually how good somebody was. That
whole thing with Monica Lewinsky, that was the residue of something else. They'll try and discredit him with something else. Yeah. Lewinsky come along, and it didn't harm him at all. In fact, it increased his popularity. And I kind of guess what...
he's a human.
If you're the president and you can get a blowjob in the Oval Office... Now, he's not the first president to get a blowjob in the Oval Office.
No, but it's normally not their wife or something, as opposed to...
Or Marilyn Monroe or somebody like that.
I know.
But he was the first to get caught. That's the difference. So, but his wife she's an awful, awful person, and she's a racist. She's a bigot. We've seen it in her speeches. But so what have we got? We've got it's try and find the better of two evils in that lot. In saying that, our Theresa May's not that much better.
Why?
Well, she's pretty much trying to take the decision. Well, she's turned around and said that she's going to bring in, what do they call it, the royal prerogative on Brexit. So she's saying no second referendum, which makes the debate that's happening right now as we record this. There's a debate on what sparked that thing. We talked about that. What she's saying is that means nothing. There was 4.1 million people signed a petition saying that they want a second referendum. Yeah. But also, that aside, if we say, right, that referendum's gone and done, what she's saying now is she is not giving the population, the voters, the people of the kingdom, the opportunity to look at what the deal is. So she's going to go and make the deal, or her people are going to go and make the deal.
Well, to be fair, those who voted out already did that. Yes. They voted out without actually knowing what the deal was.
Exactly.
So
and that should never have happened.
To be fair to her, she's saying, well, you voted, so we're doing this now. And I mean, I always stand by the fact that it wasn't, in my eyes, a majority vote. It was half-half. It was 50-50. Exactly. You've got a nation split, and I don't think we've ever been that passionate about going out and voting for something in a very, very long time. Because I mean, we're not renowned, are we, for getting on our politics, behind our politics, and voting for what we believe in, are we? And I think Brexit was the first time that it actually caused a stir, which is a good thing. However, the 50-50 split, they've got to seriously take that consideration in hand.
And you've got to consider, and they have to consider. Now, obviously, I've always been pro-Remain, so I'm a little bit one-sided on this, but you've got to take into consideration, A, the lies that were told. Now, the NHS, that 350 million per day that's going to
that's used as a reason for everything.
Exactly. Guess what they've just announced? Funding cuts to the NHS. So we've Brexited, we've done the Brexit, and they're still stripping.
Do you know what? That'll always be held to us, the NHS. Because they know that's the people's biggest fear in the UK.
Exactly.
Is not having the NHS. You know, Mr. Two Jack wants another Jack. Oh, well, it'll take money out the NHS. Yeah. You know, it's going to be used for everything. So, but I'm sorry, but they should never have been the referendum in the first place without any facts or actually investigation.
Exactly. There should have been a manifesto.
And what I don't understand is when it did come up as it came up, they were all in shock.
Yeah.
Did they not have a plan B?
They didn't. There's no way. I've said this before. There is no way Boris Johnson and the little lapdog and all these dickhead politicians that will follow him, there is no way they thought they were going to win. They wanted to be. Boris Johnson was never ever a Eurosceptic.
Well,
he wants to stay in the. He used that. He wanted to be the underdog. He wanted to lose and say, "I did everything I can. Now fuck off, David Cameron, and let me be the Prime Minister." And it bit him on the arse.
But every single one of them ran like rats from a sinking ship.
Yeah.
Not one person stayed behind.
Boris is there, but now he's been given a very limited portfolio. Now he basically he's the minister in charge of fuck all. He needs to have that on his business cards.
Fuck all department.
He's in charge of the foreign office, but they've taken MI5 and MI6 off him. That's what the Foreign Office does.
He's got absolutely nothing, has he?
He's minister in charge of playing with his fucking blonde cock.
How do you know he's blonde?
Well, have a look. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Oh, so the other thing. So we had the NHS bullshit, and obviously, you know, the NHS is getting funding cuts. The other thing was this control. You know, the EU has control over this, that, and the other, and they set the regulations and all that bullshit. So the Japanese, so G20's on, and we've got a funny story about G20 in a minute, but the G20's on. The Japanese have said the UK leaves the EU, they have to agree to standardise regulations continually with the EU, because one of the big things that happened recently was the vacuum cleaners. There was a regulation
we had to
coming.
Reduce the power of our vacuums, didn't we?
Exactly, and people were up in arms about that and moaning and bitching. But the reason that we did that was to try and sort out the atmosphere, because we're putting too much greenhouse gases.
To that, my Henry the Hoover doesn't suck anymore.
Your Henry the Hoover was made before they brought the regulation in. He's just being a lazy prick. But so the EU reg was that certain electrical appliances could only be so powerful. So that's fine. So we can now we leave the EU and we can change our regs and say, okay, we're going to repower our vacuum cleaners. So if you've got some Japanese Hoover maker who's had to put smaller powered motors into whatever they're importing into Europe. Now they've already got that kit there that they're selling to Australia and America and all that sort of stuff, so it's no big deal for them. But what if we decide to depower a little bit more? Do you think that a manufacturer in Japan is going to retool and come up with new models just for the UK?
No.
They're going to tell us to piss off.
Yeah.
The bigger issue is, so a lot of the Japanese manufacturers, the car manufacturers, have plants in the UK. Now, if the UK, so indicators at the moment, the EU reg is they have to flash out, I think, between 60 and 100 times per minute. We know what the English are like. Somebody will come up with a stupid, and I know this is going to happen, somebody's going to come up with a stupid regulation to say that it's got to be 59 to 112 flashes per minute. Japan are going to say fuck off. And we know that happened because it happened in Australia.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the vehicles that Australians can't buy, we call them grey imports, because you can bring them over, and to buy certain models in Japan or in Asia, it's a third of the price of buying.
Yeah, we're the same here. We have Japanese imports.
Yeah, but we can't to bring those in. Then we have to change so much in to actually have them suit the regs in Australia. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the Japanese have turned around and said, you know, if you want to trade with Japan and you want, more importantly, the manufacturing.
We're going to have to be in line with the EU regs anyway.
Exactly.
The thing is, though, we are one big world, and we are all connected now. We're not separate, and we're going to be tied to another country no matter what. So when leaving the EU did not say, yeah, check us out, we're independent. What it said was, check us out, we just thought we'd try this out and see how it felt, and we fucked up, and oh dear, we still got to do everything that America, Japan and China do anyway.
Exactly.
So, it's...
But a lot of those, I think we talked about it last time as well, a lot of those regs are there for a really, really good reason. It's about longevity.
It is. I mean, there's certain things that obviously have an impact. We've just recently felt it due to inward processing relief. It's this thing where we didn't have to pay tax on duty on anything coming in until we had 6 months to get it back out, and then we'd get charged. So, but now that's changed, we're now in line with the rest of the EU, and we basically have to pay for it up front and then refund it once it goes. Now, for a small company like us, I'm going to bill for £50,000 on an order that we're going to get back anyway eventually, but we have to wait 6 months. That could kill us. So there are things that have affected us because it's not necessarily thought through, and I do think there'll be slight adjustments for like smaller companies, whether it's like impressed account or whatever. But I just feel that no matter what, that control is always going to be had.
It has to be there. And like for some points, it is red tape and it's bureaucracy, but there's very few. There was, what's his name? John Oliver, the British comedian who's now in America, probably the only person in America that people think are funny that's also British. He did a really good synopsis on this because there was a big thing about pillows. They were saying there's so many controls on EU regulations on pillows, and there was none. It's just... But the other thing, so this was one of, I think this was one of Farage's wet dreams, and that was to bring in a points-based immigration system based on the Australian point system. Now, I did that test today, and if I was a British person, educated British person, who wanted to decide to want to go and live in Australia and find a job while I'm there. Can't go.
No, it is it's really hard to get into Australia. No, if you have to have been in a gap. It
has to be a gap profession, which they keep changing. I need the state to sponsor me. I need an employer to sponsor me. It's absolute, and it's very time limited.
And that would be costly too.
Oh yeah.
That would be costly.
Yeah.
So I mean,
but a well-educated white man, never been unemployed, 10 years military service, can't go and live in Australia.
Yeah, but the thing is, you could because it was Australian Army.
No, but
and you are Australian.
If we take that away, I didn't put that. I'm actually an Australian on the form. Can I immigrate to Australia? Because that would be a little bit.
So basically, you're bitching about something that's not an issue to you right now.
No, I'm trying to explain that this points-based system is an absolute crock of shit because forget about Australia. The UK doesn't need white, well-educated, military experienced people to come in and work high-end management jobs. We need the people that make the country actually fucking tick. We need, when I was in the army, I had a kitchen hand who was, and I swear to God, and I looked after this guy the best I can. He was the most important person in that kitchen. Not me, not the kitchen manager. The guy who made sure that the pots were clean, made sure everything was there we needed.
Yeah, but that's it though. It's every job.
Oh, fuck you. They're the people that make the world go round.
Of course they are. Well, every job, and they all links to each other. In actual fact, it's normally the ones that are just sat up in their ivory tower, sat back on the big leather chairs that do very little, that have at least an impact. But no, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, but anyway, Theresa May's rejected that, and Farage is having his bloody man period about it.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, to finish off, talking about the G20, now there's been a warning go out to, and this was in the BBC, so I'll just read the headlines, and it's in regard, like I said, it's G20. So, the British government officials travelling to the G20 summit in China have been warned to exercise vigilance against honeypot spies who may attempt to lure them in having sex.
Fuck off. Is that not chapter 1 of being a spy?
Yeah, well, now, I joined the army in 1990 and honeypots was not a new thing in 1990.
Well, the thing is, right, even if you're a sailor, I'm ex-Navy, I know this, when your ship goes to port, you get a warning, listen, right, just be aware, be careful, watch yourselves, take care.
One of Gordon Brown's
Don't
aides.
end up in a sex clinic.
Yeah.
I mean, surely it was just a leaflet that went out because they're all
No.
This seriously?
This is serious. They've given them burn phones. They've given them they can't take their own computers or anything like that. Their mobile phones basically
I get that bit, but surely the whole getting suckered in by a lovely lady. Surely that's like basic.
When Gordon Brown was Prime Minister of the Kingdom, he went over to China. I think it was in China. He went somewhere with one of his aides, and his aide woke up in the morning after having a dalliance, and all his phones were missing, his computers, all the paper. He got done. And when was Gordon Brown Prime Minister? 10 years ago?
How idiotic.
Not even 10 years ago.
Seriously?
It still happens. Oh, yeah.
That's fucking stupid.
When I was in Sydney...
I tell you what, intelligent people don't have to have common sense, do they?
No. When we were in Sydney, they actually, the MPs employed, we believe it was a trans... I always get this wrong. Is it a trans girl when they're born a male and then they become a...
Can't we just say transgender? They were the opposite.
I just don't want the internet to yell at me for getting it wrong.
Well, transgender just covers both bases, doesn't it?
We'll
I don't know.
It that way. I don't know.
Don't know, neither do I.
Not the important part of the story.
Just because we're ignorant doesn't mean that we mean any hatred.
The rumour was that the MPs had actually employed a transgender person to act as a honeypot for all new soldiers that were coming into the base to test them out. Yeah. So I don't know if that was true or not, but that was the story that was going around.
People liked the idea of that, didn't they?
Well,
somebody might try and pull me.
It was Sydney, so Sydney. It was on Oxford Street in Sydney, which is the gay trans. Like that road is where all the gay clubs in Sydney were. So it's possible. It's very possible. I don't know, but yeah. So bit of a fear, bit of a scare, but it still happens, and the proof's in Gordon Brown's former aide who got honeypotted.
Oh dear.
I wonder if they have the opposite, like a honey stick. Like,
what do you mean?
Well, Theresa May.
You mean like somebody tries to pull a girl?
Yeah.
A handsome young man or something. Well, surely a honeypot's the same thing, just because it's not female. It's still a honeypot.
No, well, it's called a honeypot because of the anatomy that's supposed to be sweet and potty. Do you know what else was called a honeypot in the military?
Go on.
Remember your shit pit? You used to burn it?
Yeah.
Did you have your big central fire that you emptied all the shit cans in? That in Vietnam, that was called a honeypot.
Nice.
You didn't want to stick it in that either.
No.
I think that's enough for this week.
Yeah, I think it is. On that note.
Well, that is about enough for this week. I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's Skeptic Smash Talk. Don't forget to look out for new shows each Monday evening UK time. And like I say, there might be a very short update episode later in the week, depending on what happened in Parliament tonight. Remember, if you want to keep in touch, you can follow and like the show on all the social networks that allow following and liking, and you can get all the contact information you need at skepticsmashtalk.com. If you did, in fact, enjoy this show, please take a moment to leave a review and the appropriate amount of stars on iTunes, where you can also find past and future episodes. Better still, if you really enjoyed the show, feel free to post the links and share all the information with all of your friends on all of the social networks. So, on behalf of myself and Andrea, thanks for listening, and until next time, this has been Skeptic Smash Talk.